All right, so let's talk about the isms here. There are three of them that we're going to talk about. We're talking about nationalism, which has two components, cultural and political, and we'll talk about liberalism and conservatism, which are also going to be born out of this time period. So let's talk about nationalism first. I would argue with you that this was the defining thing that really prompted a lot of the movements in this time period with all the revolutions. It's a belief in national identity. You're not loyal to a king anymore. You're loyal to a group of people. And that's what cultural nationalism is. That's a distinct born people born into a unique community. Cultural nationalism. It's more than family, more than clan, more than religion. It's who you are. The easy one for where you are now, American. As a nation, as a nation. A nation is a group of people. You have that shared language, that shared values. So let's go back to the American Revolution. Think about this for a second. You had less and less them viewing themselves as being British and more as British subjects, and then as opposed to the people here in the Western Hemisphere seeing themselves, no, we're part of the colonies, and that's who we are, part of these colonies, which will eventually morph into being America. And so it's no, we are different than you. We have different shared cultural experiences and different traditions. Political nationalism is when you're politically independent from other nations, but you really start to have more and more. I mean, the Germans, you think Holy Roman Empire, and you have von Herder calls for German nationalism, and the Grimm brothers, who you've seen a lot of their stuff, writing comes out the ideals, and you start to see this more and more nationality. You have it in Italy too, where you have young Italians encouraging each other, led by Mazzani, to become an Italian group. You have the Greeks wanting their independence in 1821; they get it in 1830, and that really is going to start this movement through the rest of Europe. Nationalism, loyalty to a group of people. Belgium, Italy, Poland. You have places all over. They want their independence. And remember, a nation in the end, it's a group of people thinking this is who we are. It's a part of our identity of who we are. So that's the first one. The second two are number two and number three. The first one's conservatism. Basically, that society, and this is Burke saying this, that society was a compact between people's ancestors and the present generations and the descendants that are unborn. And so basically, natural progress, that change is normal. Change is normal, but it happens at a very slow pace. And so if it's a natural change, a logical change, yeah, they're for it. But if it's not, they're against it. So like Burke sees the American Revolution as something being natural, something that just you drifted apart over time. Whereas the French Revolution, no, he didn't agree with that because it was so chaotic and so cumbersome. Now, this is opposed to liberalism is also going to start to develop at this time, where change is more seen as normal. It's a sign of progress. Thought that conservatives were not dealing enough with injustices and inequalities, that the conservatives were defenders of the status quo. Now, they still think voting was a privilege. Voting was a privilege, and that liberals would also believe in natural rights, constitutional governments, laissez-faire economics, and less spending on the church and the armies. But what you have here is you're going to start having these different dichotomies. They're going to big time morph as you move forward into the 21st century. I don't think a fair comparison for the liberals and conservatives of this time period would be back to liberals and conservatives of the 21st century. Because, I mean, conservatives as a whole, they basically keep absolute monarchs in place. And that a liberal wouldn't have said that. A liberal, and I don't think a conservative would say that they keep an absolute monarchy in place. You have Edmund Burke as your famous conservative in this case. And then a little bit later, you have John Stuart Mill. He's a philosopher and economist and social reformer in Britain during the height of the Industrial Revolution. He likes to pursue economics. And basically, he said, the greatest good for the greatest number of people is what should rule. That the majority should not put its will in the minority, even though they have different interests and values. Universal suffrage for all in terms of liberalism. But the thing here, again, with John Stuart Mill, the greatest number of good for the greatest number of people. Those are your three isms. Nationalism has two parts, your cultural nationalism and your political nationalism, and then your conservatism and your liberalism.